Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. We are recording about a half an hour after the close on Friday, the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. And there's certainly no love for the S&P because the S&P is not loving us right now. The markets, the love in the markets right now is based on the market you're trading because there is no sort of blanket statement you can make. So we're gonna dive in. We're gonna see which markets are properly set up and which ones, we just have to continue to wait and be patient. My name's Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner Barrie Hederachi. Barrie, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I'm back in LA for a while, so
Oh yeah. Are you
I think
feeling any love from the S&P? I don't think so, huh?
I'm hoping we get some next week. Get some love next week. I'm talking about the
Right.
S&P here. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens. Looks like, every Friday we're up here, up in the same area for the last 4 weeks, you
Yeah.
know, and it's really starting to test me. But
I
that's
mean,
just about when, things start to happen. Go ahead.
right. I mean, look at this. Like the S&P for 4 weeks, we've been basically bouncing up and down, going nowhere.
Hmm.
And then you have something like Meta, the
Hmm.
stock, I think they said today was the 20th day in a row it was up. 20 straight trading days that thing's been up. So it
Right.
it really is you really got to look at the individual market or the individual stocks because there's just no like sort of groundswell, big wave coming in that's taken everything with it. At least
Hmm.
not yet.
Right. Right. It's not
So
lifting all the boats, all the ships.
no, no, the tide is
Mm.
definitely not lifting all the boats. So let's dive into the S&P and see if there are any clues that a break is imminent or we can sort of get out of this range.
Well, we talked about Groundhog Day last week, but I feel like all of us, when we talk about the S&P, it sounds like Groundhog to me because that's what it's been.
I mean, it's
But
still 60-20 and 61-13, right?
yeah, yeah, what can I say? But
Right.
but that's what markets, that's how markets behave sometimes. And like you said, there are plenty of other markets to trade. That's why we cover all the other things. And you're covering wheat today and a couple of other things, sugar. Some of
Yeah,
these other
yep,
markets are moving.
yep.
And that's the idea, right? We're not forcing a market to trade. We're waiting for the markets to move so that we can start trading them.
Yep.
And if you look at this big, if you look at the chart here up on the screen, you can see, we have nice trending periods, and then there are periods where we consolidate, and then we move again. So this has got to be one of the bigger consolidations I remember in the recent history. And that's okay because look at all the changes the whole world is going through, and it's all, I think it all gets reflected in the markets. And what,
Hmm.
what better place than the S&P? So,
Right.
so these things are, I think they're part of the natural trading cycle, and we have to trade it as such and treat it as such. And speaking of trading cycle, so we've been, like you said, we've been talking about the 61-13 to the upside, the 50% square,
Yep.
and this 60-20 level. We kind of flirted with it midweek and pushed higher into the 50% again. So the question now is, what happens next? When we get to the weekly, I want to show you guys something that will kind of show, the highs and lows are, it's rare when highs and lows just turn on a dime,
Hmm.
the real, the decent ones. They always take a little time. They always do a little bit of a dance and get everybody on the wrong foot, and then we start to move. So, I mean, it's always the case, or it's something you see often, at least in the S&P
Hmm.
and some of the commodities. So anyway, for next week, looking at the cash here, you guys, if you have 60-20 and 61-13 marked off on your charts, well, don't erase it because we're going to stay with that.
Hmm.
And as we go through the indices and go through the different charts for the S&P and the futures market, ES, we'll try to clear this up. But this is kind of what it is for now. And one thing that changed this week was we took out last week's high and we took out the previous week's high, right? Those things that happened. And we also have a higher low this week, because so compared to last week, we have a higher low and a higher high.
Hmm.
So we have to keep that in mind going into next week. And we'll see how that shows up as we go through the charts. So here's the March contract. This is the futures contract. And you can see most of the action happened above the 90-degree mark. We did run up 90 days up into a high. We corrected 45 days roughly. And we ran up back into the 50% level. Didn't quite take out this cluster of days that's right above the 50%, but we're definitely poking right in there. And today, if you notice, we happened to close above it. We had the entire day kind of above it, right?
Mm-hmm.
See that? We had a good run yesterday, of course, and then we kind of held above it. So that's something to watch. This is a calendar day chart. We looked at the square that came up, acted like nothing even happened. We just, one day down, couple days up. That's it for that. We have the Dow chart here. You can see here it's a little bit of a different pattern, right? Here we have a triangle
Mm-hmm.
forming, and it's happening right about, right in the range here between 44,300 and the 50% level. The triangle I'm talking about is right there. See that?
Mm-hmm.
Right there. Now, obviously it can break to the upside. We'll sit above the 50% and we can trade higher. We can break to the upside as a false break and roll lower, or we can just break to the downside. But either way, right now it's a little bit difficult to say because look, it's right below the 50% level and it's above the 44,300. So it's like a sandwich. It's between two key levels until it gets above one of the or gets below the other. You really can't make too much of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dow was down today, and that could have a lot of reasons for that. But the point is, we're not moving higher in the broader sense, and we're triangulating, and that has to break at some point because and then this triangle's got a couple of days left. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through the charts. And here's the continuous chart for the ES. Again, same, pretty much the same story. We ran up into the ABCD. We, basically got under it, and we've been sort of tapping around the 50% level,
Mm-hmm.
the 6,100 level. Oh gosh, past couple of months. Now the key here is, after we made the low in mid-January, so about a month ago, we've been making higher lows, right? We've been
Mm-hmm.
making higher lows and not necessarily higher highs as in a trend up, but it is starting to squeeze. So we want to note that, okay, as we get into the weekly chart. So we'll look at that in a second. Let me get there. So here's a weekly chart, and here we have the ES 6166 is the level of the 50% level up here in the 45-degree chart. So when you look at this, I mean, look how mixed up things are. And this is what it kind of,
Mm-hmm.
to me, this is kind of what it takes to pull out what's important and like what's happening. So far as I'm concerned, we can, if you look at the bigger picture, we can say, well, the trend is up. Sure, it's up. But then we started to stall and we really haven't made a new high after the last correction. And it's unusual for the market to be stalled. And this is not just any spotting space, right? This is coming off of a lot of lows. We have resistance up here. And we know that because the market stalled. For whatever reason, it stalled at the right place. And now we have to start looking at, well, and this is what we've been doing, right? Waiting to
Mm-hmm.
see which way is it going to break. And my team has been, long as the high is in place, we have to look at the downside because we don't know if the downside cycle is finished or if we burned up the time going sideways. Now that can happen, right? I've seen it happen. Market
Sure.
can put in some great numbers to the upside, but if the conditions aren't right, it'll burn up that time going sideways, and that could very well be happening. But what I wanted to show was, just looking at, I don't know, last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, if you look at the highs, like let's take the high in 22,
Mm-hmm.
we came into, we came into right? If you watch where the cursor is, if you look at the week of November 7th, we can
Yep.
say, well, we came up to resistance, we can expect something kind of a stall out or whatever turn, and we have a 90-week cycle coming in. So maybe we'll go into that. I'm sure we mentioned that at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what happened? Then we have a, very contracted short week, tight week, and the next week we reversed. Then it's like, oh wow, the low could be in. Then what happens the next week? We put a low in, we rally higher. Then another day up week. Then we have a reversal, basically in like a during the week because we went lower, and then we reversed the upside on December 25th, the week of that week, and then so that's the dotted line. You can see where all the highs are.
Mm-hmm.
And then in January, right, we are on top of the 50%. So at that point, most people would say, well, gosh, we broke it. Even if you don't have any squares or lines, just looking at the structure, well, we broke to the upside. Look at that
We're
clean
going
bar.
higher, right? We're
We're
going
going
higher.
higher. Look at that, how clean that is. And
Yep.
what happened the week after? Whoop, a reversal. Okay, it's holding pretty much on top of that resistance. Great, great. And come Monday, it looks like it was going to go higher, reverse. And that's where the whole thing got started, right? Then we were down for 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that down move was fairly decent. We had a couple of times to get short positions in. And here it stalled right at the 135. And when it finally did make the big low, we see from the low that was 90 up in 135, 35 days, 35
Mm-hmm.
bars,
Mm-hmm.
and 45 from the high. So that was a good low. I remember we called that out, and then
Yep.
from there we
Yep.
started moving higher. All right. So the point about the highs is you see how much time it wasted, right? It didn't just come in and
Took a
uh,
couple
t-
months,
it took a
literally, because you
yeah.
said it started like around the 7th of November.
We hit the price level, you know, that week,
Yep.
and after that, it took
Took till
till
January.
January 15th to really kind of show everybody, well, we're not going higher, we're actually going lower.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes time to do that. And if you look at where else can we look? Well, the high here in 2020, and we were working on that high, and I think we did call that out. So
Yep.
here, it came in January 18th. Then the next week looked like we wanted to go higher. 1 day correction, back up 2 weeks. February 22nd, what happens? We reverse and we go lower. And we were going off of other lows, so I don't have the square set up there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty much of the same deal. The false break was right, coming off the highs in January. So January 18th to 25th, that second part, those highs got taken out, false break, and you can see how fast that move was going down. News or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the news event was doesn't really matter. That's just how it manifests. And even the high, back in 2018, if you look at that, we came into a false break, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, we just sat around before anything happened, and then we had a pretty decent correction for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, sometimes it takes time, and this feels like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have 1 week that's sitting on top and, oh my God, yeah, we're going to break out and go to the moon, kind of like people talked about it here on
Mm-hmm.
January. Remember that January, everything was very hot, and the following week everything was hot till it was not. We saw,
Right. Right.
and so that bullishness has to be there till the last days, I guess is my point. And the reason we use the squares and levels is to kind of guide us, so we're not emotionally getting attached to anything. So that's my little story of, hey, sometimes it takes time for these things to set up and to turn or not to turn. If it's not to turn, then we ought to probably, I would like to see some uh, price action towards that end, and we haven't seen that, right? So,
Yeah, I was just counting it out. It looks like it's been 8 weeks since that December high.
yeah,
So
yep. And
let's see.
my gut feel, this is not technical, is that it's about next week's about time when we get a break. Either we break to
Mhm.
the upside or we do some kind of shenanigans and we go lower.
Turn down. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everybody, we've got a lot of changes, a lot of all kinds of news. So I think if you're not a technical trader, this all probably looks very bullish.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of when things get a little shaky. So let's continue to watch that.
Hmm.
Let me see if I have another. Well, this is the square of the low from 2009. And I went into a little bit of great length and showed you guys some examples in time last week.
Hmm.
So you guys can check the video. Uh, so this February 28th ends up becoming a timing point. And I looked at those timing points last week and see, these things don't happen exactly on the timing point, but following these timing points, we've had some decent trends in the opposite direction. So what are we
Hmm.
talking about? We came down into this point. A couple of weeks later, we started the entire, move higher. Entire move higher, sat around for a couple of weeks, and then we corrected.
Hmm.
Here. Uh, and up in 2018, we were sitting around. That's that false break I was pointing to,
Yep.
and it happened pretty much. That was pretty much on time. And here, the 2021 high, we 22, I should say, 2021 December, 22 January.
Hmm.
We had a timing line come in, well, a full square timing line, and you can see even after that, we went out about 3 bars before we started to correct. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go a couple of weeks, couple of bars past March, into March 17th or so. That all is a window if you look at just how this square has been performing.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm just saying we got to keep those things in mind, and I don't think we ought to ignore that.
Sure.
So
It's another piece of the puzzle.
exactly. Now let's take a minute and visit the weekly cash chart. Again, pretty much the same story where this is square coming out of the 2020 low. We are more or less squaring out. We haven't really left the range. We're tapping up against the big ABCD. Didn't really take it out. So all kinds of things happening, but the price is not moving. It's just oscillating in this one range. To say again, it's now we just have to wait. We gave it a shot to, we're going to get a lower high, which normally it does, like all these other highs that came in, they always give a lower high for you to get in. Outside the lower high, we have a false break left. So that's the one we have to watch now going into next week.
It looks like
And
there's Velcro stuck to that ABCD target.
yeah, well, maybe I should just delete this little little zone I put up there, turned into
Right,
Velcro.
right.
It's just there. But anyway, let's see how it plays out. The key thing is, another interesting thing is I have my geometric line here that it's been
Hmm.
tapping a couple of times, but still not a whole lot of selling going on, no big correction to the downside. So I guess that's pretty much what I have. Let me look at
That's
the,
good stuff. Real good
yeah,
stuff.
well, it's you have to work with what you got, right? Here's the
Hmm.
30 minute. Want to take a quick look at it. So 30 minute, let's just start on the second. We went up 180 degrees, corrected back to the 90, mess around in the middle part for a while. That's between 60.55 and 60.80, pretty tight range. Sat on top of it for a while, came back down. And so you can see the 60.25 level was tested pretty well. Then we got on top, 60.55 was tested, got on top of the 50% of the square, 61.16 corrected. As soon as we took it out, got on top of it. So in one sense, this is getting on top of 61.16 and holding, right? We settled above it, no
Yep.
question.
Hmm.
And well, the trick here is now we have a whole bunch of resistance right on top. All 61.61 is really like the main level, which is right there, the 50% level, very close to the high of this contract.
Hmm.
And below that, we have 61.46 and 61.56, which, each level is resistance, and and they're, if you put it all together, it's fairly tight, right? 10 points apart roughly.
Hmm.
So that builds up pretty stiff resistance here, and we'll have to see next week if we can take that out. So my thing is, if we can get in there and settle above 61, which obviously is the old highs, then we're done with the cycle. I think that, that's, to me, that's more or less settling above. We're
Hmm.
burned out the cycle in time. Now we're going to start something new. But going back to the weekly, I'm still waiting for clarity, right? Because each chart has its own sort of theme. Now for next week, based at the short time frame, 30-minute, the 61.16 is really the level. We were looking at 61.20 today, right, Ben?
Hmm.
So 61.16 is really the level based on the charts, and that's 180 up from the low. So the thing is, this 180, you can see it was a key level here. We came up and tapped it, so that was a really good resistance. Took a bit of news to get through. So if we take the 61.16 out next week, I think there's a good chance that could tip the entire cycle down because we're getting, last week I was talking about running out of time. So, because we've been running sideways for about 45 days since the high counts came in. And so because of that, and we have a short week next week, and with 3 days off, plenty of time for news. So we'll see.
Hmm.
So we'll see how it goes next week. But watch 61.16. If we get under that, it could sort of get things started to the downside. And to the upside, if we can sort of grind through this or gap through it, I wouldn't be surprised if we gap and start up here. I wouldn't be surprised if we gap down below this. So this is
Hmm.
the bracket to really watch these, going into next week. The 61.16 and 61.61 is sort of the bracket. We know this. I talked about this being resistance, talked about this being support. And what else can I add? That's about it.
No, that
Anything?
those good levels.
Yeah. Yeah, they're good levels. I, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that because most of this is really getting your head straight. It's not even about the trade necessarily because the trade will show up, when the markets are running. But now, at least talking it out helps me to see,
No,
well,
you're right. You're right, though. It is getting your head straight because for the past 2 months, you've got your head kicked in if you tried to momentum trade this thing, breakout
yeah.
trade it,
Hmm.
either to the
Yeah.
upside or the downside.
Downside. Yeah. That's the thing, there's not a whole lot to the upside. I guess all the surprises were to the downside because you gap down and like, oh, whoa,
Yeah,
that's
but if you bought down, if you tried to like sell the break of, making new lows or something, you got crushed
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
they bought it right back up.
Hmm. And if you bought the things and you held it past this, then you got
Then you
nailed
got
again on the
crushed
other side,
again.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
there's
that's
a,
why you want to get your, head straight and remember where we are and how we got there and let the time burn out. We talked about the weekly bars and how sometimes the high time will click in, but you might go 2, 3 weeks past that.
Mhm,
And we saw a
mhm.
real example, so I'm not just, making it up. And you guys should go back and, look at the weekly charts, daily charts to see when highs come in, especially coming off of good counts like we had for the highs we're having, dealing with here. What happened? Sometimes it takes time, sometimes it doesn't. But if it does take time, we want to be sure. Uh, Not sure. We want to wait for the proper evidence to start on the new leg without, you don't want to start getting on it too early. Either side,
Mhm,
either way, either way.
mhm.
So, all right. So let's look at bonds.
That was another whippy market this week.
Yep, yep. But the key thing is, 45 held last week. We were good there. And we traded lower, a couple of day rebound. Okay, fine. If you can see visually, we're between the 50% of the lower square and the 45-degree line. And we just corrected about quarter of the square. So it looks like bonds are going to consolidate here for a bit till it gets above the 45-degree line. It's about 116 and a half, 116.14 is really the number. So until that happens, I think bonds are weak. And if we take out the um, 110, 111 level, then probably going to get weaker. But for now, it looks like it's going to consolidate. So we'll watch that.
Could it
I
also
think
potentially be doing an ABCD up there, like a corrective
it
ABCD?
could, but then it'll have to take out the 45, right?
Right.
116.
We'll have to take
Yeah.
out the
Yeah.
45. Yeah.
Yeah. If it does that, then I'll be fully on board. And that'll
Hmm.
be a hell of a ABCD.
Yeah, it'll get it. Looks like
Hmm.
it'd take you up to around 119, 120, right?
Well, let's put it on. Let's see.
Hmm.
You can see I'm not very bullish. Don't even have my ABC to the upside.
Right, right,
I am buying it.
right.
But
Yeah,
well, look at that. It takes it
right
right
to
to
your
the
number.
next
Right.
level. That's why I don't have to have it on there.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
if it gets there, great. But I think the tripwire, so to speak, is the 45-degree line.
No
So,
question.
so we'll see if that works out.
Hmm.
So that's for the bonds. Let's take a quick look at the weekly. Weekly is also kind of trapped, 117, 22, 16, 20, 16, 14. I mean, they're all clustered right in this area.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's why I feel like, it's probably going to consolidate, or obviously if we take out this week's low, we're definitely headed lower.
Hmm.
But a consolidation is not out of the question. I mean, we had one here, so let it finish up what it's doing, and we'll pick it up. So right now, basis the daily, we saw kind of what we had to deal with. It's not, I don't have anything definite. Once we get above here, fine. We might have 3, 4 points straight to the upside, and if we get stalled out, we might have 3, 4 points straight to the downside. So I'm
Hmm.
treating the 45-degree line, this 116, 13 to 16, 16 and a half, that area to be sort of like a balance point.
Hmm.
So you can go with that. All right, take a look at crude. Well, we did the 360 bars from the high to low, the high in
Interesting. Yep.
October.
Hmm.
Did the year. And well, if you guys wonder why I have 73.50 on the line, you can see what happened this week. Went up there, tapped it, reversed. And that's the idea, right? It's weaker below 73.50, and that's what we're seeing. And
Hmm.
it'll be stronger above it. And guys can see easily if you drop the line, as soon as we get under it, it was just crude was weak. And if we, like, I talked a little bit about this last week. If we can hold above this 69 level, it's still better off, and it looks like it's doing a little bit better. It's holding around 70. So that means it's got about $1 more to go if it wanted to. So crude is a little bit soft here because we're between points. 73 is resistance, and you can see if you played that, worked out. So not much next week other than if we go lower, we know where the lower boundary is. There's a high upper boundary. But we are entering this, sort of the chop zone, right?
No question.
For me, so the clue that we're not going to get stuck in the chop zone is holding above 69.
Hmm.
So far we've done that, and hopefully it'll do that next week. But we'll see. If it doesn't, if we get down to 64.75 area, I keep saying, it's possible we get down to 61, 61 and flush everything before something big start to happen. Seems like it's a way to roll.
It sure looks like it's setting up to do a flush.
Mm-hmm. I mean, don't even ask me why or how, any reason for any of this, because I have no idea. So here's my second. We have two weekly charts for bonds. Here's the other one. And again, we're above the 114 level that we talk about,
Hmm.
but we didn't quite get up to the 144 the full square coming off the high in 2020. So that's really the big deal is here. That's where the market turned, back in December.
Hmm.
Again, basis of weekly, this is just another correction, and the daily is going to help us sort of stay focused on early detection, I suppose, right?
Hmm.
Here's a weekly crude chart. Not much to add. If you want to do this steeper trend line, we basically went up. We're coming back for a recheck. But like I said, all of this to work out to the upside from here, we have to hold above 69. If we break 69, then we got a lot more work to do before we get moving. And that's just how crude rolls.
Hmm.
Not like we have any control over them, right? We're just trading them. All right, gold, we broke out the 240-degree level. And once it, we were looking for a breakout of the triangle. We broke the triangle, retest, broke out of the 240. We were looking at 50% of the square being the target. We got there, went up to the next quarter level. We went up to 3/4 of the square, and things got a little bit shaky. And now we're back below the 50% level. But gold is in a super strong position above this 240 level. So above, 27.89.
Hmm.
Gold is very strong. Really doesn't matter what the news is. But I'll tell you what is coming up is the 360 time count. So we'll see if gold decides to run back up again and maybe square out. That would be kind of nice.
And
If it can,
from the December low, we did on the daily, we did 90 up.
you mean the November low here?
I have December low. Yeah, December 19th low.
Hmm. So that'd be
We,
easy. Let me
yeah, I
figure out
think we
square.
did 90 up there.
We did 60 run from here, just about 60. So
And it was squaring out. Like on a
mhm.
weekly, it did like 288 by 72. So there's some decent squares there.
This 270 came up, right? We came up to
Hmm.
270 there.
Hmm. Yeah, there's your 90.
There's your 90, almost 45, right?
Almost, yeah.
Hmm.
It was
That's
like
probably
90 by 36.
right. So that's probably why the
Little sell off.
little sell off, little agitation there.
Hmm.
All right, that we got to watch. Time is not quite there. I think we have a little bit more time left.
Sure.
Uh, let's say possibly next week. Let's see what happens here. But regardless of the time, it's above this 50% square. In the bigger
It
picture, it's in a very
it's
strong
strong.
position. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And this, yeah, no, yeah, obviously, if we can settle above this, it has more to go. But I think knowing gold, it has to consolidate, come back a little. I mean, because that was quite a bit of a run, right? Getting up
Yeah.
in after the break. And if you measure the break, this is a measured, move coming off of a break, because if you measure the length of that, you know how
Hmm.
you
Yeah, sure.
do that.
And the hope, you look at this chart and you can have hope for any of these other markets that have been consolidating and frustrating you, because when they break, you get a great move.
Hmm.
Because remember when gold was doing that triangle, how frustrated everybody was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
boom, once it
Boom.
goes, it goes.
And if you look at the breakout move, so it got to the target. So
Hmm.
its correction makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, one other thing I want to look at in gold before we move on is, if you go to the initial low before
Hmm.
the triangles start to form, the low, you can see we got above the low. I mean, we got above 90, and
Hmm.
now we're just, we kind of managed to hold above it, and then today we kind of broke through it. So I
Battling
think,
out there.
but yeah,
Hmm.
but the low is starting to give, and I think this is really the level you want to watch, the 28.99
Hmm.
as sort of a support resistant level, meaning if we get stuck below 28.99, then I think you could expect, you know, it to be in a corrective mode till we get on top of it again, unless we get till we get to some kind of a support level, either the quarter level, which is
Hmm.
28.10 or so, or 28.27 right in there. That's support. So that's one. The other thing is I'm always looking to see, what is it from the swing low, what kind of counts are we getting?
Hmm.
And if you go to the swing low, you know, this 270 was the big deal, right? So we did the
Yep.
triangle there and we broke out to the upside. Great, great. So, but now, this 28.84 is 50%. It's 315 degrees up from the low
Sure.
back in 22. So I think you ought to give it a little bit of room and say, "Oh, I just showed you guys what happened, the level from here, the
Hmm.
low triangle low." Uh, but if we go from the low back in 22, another level to watch in gold would be this 28.84 level.
Sure.
And yeah, just to say, if 28.84 is held, we still have a little bit more to go. I mean, it would be so classic for gold to go up and finish 360, and really do it. If we can do that,
Absolutely.
it'll be like 30.66. So if we can get
Hmm.
there, great. And if we can hold up here and somewhere and do it, okay, fine. But if you get stuck below 28.84, well, we might have a little bit more of a correcting to do before we do anything else. But yeah, that 90 move definitely pegged it, right? We definitely stalled out there. We had the measured move there. So a lot of things are there. And let's take a quick look at the weekly because I think there are some things there we ought to, because I know we had some weekly counts. Did we talk about this last week? I can't remember. Yeah, I think we did,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have a 120-week cycle that's coming up. This is coming off the 22 low, the one I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about, right? So in time wise, we're there. We're in 1/3 of the square going up into there. So we could have something big happening here. And look at that candle, that's not looking very bullish.
No.
So taking all the things into consideration, I would definitely watch this closely because we could have these time cycles expire. And like I did with the other, the daily, if you go back to, let's say where all this started back in
That's a good
20,
one.
20 2015,
Mm-hmm.
we're 480 weeks out and 240 weeks up. So
It's a good
that's
one.
pretty good,
It's a good one.
that's a good one.
Yep.
And it's good because you can see what happened at the 120 up. We stalled out, stalled here, stalled here, stalled here. And this is where we really nailed it when he got on top of it and just, built a little triangle on top. Those are very easy pickings, and then it started to move. So basically, look at this, Ben. We went from the low in 2015 all the way, two squares up in
Mm-hmm.
2025. And that looks pretty good, basis the weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might be a week off here off some of these other lows or a couple of days off, but from this big, what I would like a grand cycle, if you look at 10 years or, close to 10 years, then this is not bad.
Yep. And if you go off the October 6th low, I got a like 288 by 272 by 72 on the weekly.
October, where? Which year?
October 23, October 6th of
Mm-hmm. Oh,
23.
yeah, that low. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you have? How many weeks?
It was 72.
Yeah. Okay. We can check that.
Yep, 72
So we do
weeks.
have some counts here. I mean, especially numbers coming off of when you showed that 90, I wanted to see like, wow, that's a good one. Is there anything else happening? So
Yeah, there's
here,
a lot. There you go.
I mean, we basically scored out
Yep.
144 by 72. That's a really
I'm
good
telling
one.
you, I had a 4 hour square, I had a daily square, I had a weekly
Mm-hmm,
square.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All very good. And this is a good low with the corrective low that where things got started.
Yep.
And we have this low where we did the 120, right?
Hmm.
So a couple of number of things to watch here. And I drew this line to remind me where I got that. Otherwise, I keep losing losing my points. But we do have stuff here, you guys. So be on the lookout.
And again, the other thing to look at is look at the reaction today in
Mm-hmm.
gold. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were up about $30 and we closed down 50
Right.
today.
Right. Mm.
And all
Yeah.
these squares were firing off as well.
Right. That's a big
So
deal.
I'm not saying gold's going to crash because if you go back and look, the corrections it's done every time it's squared out have been basically just sideways consolidations.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And
It just,
here, it's got plenty of room to correct. Not a
yep,
problem.
yeah.
But there are cycles that are present and happening. So especially the ones coming off the
You
daily
don't want
that
to be
you,
Johnny come lately buying gold in here. Let's put it that way.
yeah, I think that's good advice.
You'll probably be frustrated if you do.
Hmm. And yeah, I would watch this 90 also.
Hmm.
And that 90 is at what, 2903.
Hmm.
So watch between 2884, 2903. We want to be able to get above that. If we don't, then I would say there's a correction. And this was a kind of a check back, but it was kind of shallow, right? It really didn't
Hmm.
go too far. So
Mm-mm.
even if it came all the way back to 27, 2723, 2720, the long haul, we're still good and we got the correction down there. So
Yep.
so that's kind of my take on gold. All right, let's move on to copper.
Let's see how that develops over the next few
Yeah,
weeks.
for sure. Copper, well, the daily got on top of the 50%, and we talked about it moving higher, and sure enough, it did that. And I remember talking about, well, unless we do a false break here, and damn it, if it didn't. It looks like a false break so far, right?
It
It's
does.
it's
It
popped
does.
up and reversed. So you guys, copper definitely has corrective base. Above 454, I think it's stable and on the strong side, but if we get below 454, I would expect more weakness.
Hmm.
And if you look at the weekly, we talked about this 50% level a couple of times, and we got there again. So clearly, we started getting these higher lows and moved higher off the 144-degree level, got up into the 50% of the square. So I think the area is okay. Yeah, sure, we could correct a little bit and move higher. But for now, I think the impulse part is done. And let's see what the corrective part does and let it finish up. Just like the gold, it seems like the impulse part is done, and now let the corrective part finish up. It's kind of what it
Hmm.
feels like,
Hmm.
And this is where we were talking about every boat's kind of doing its own thing.
Exactly.
So the metals are doing their own thing. Well, silver tried to break out. Can't say it didn't.
Hmm.
And you can have another triangle here and say, well, it did break out. Maybe we're done with the run. But anyway, this is the low I was going off of. We were measuring the 50% off of that. And that's $32. 90 would have been nice, even to break the 90 a little bit and do a false break. 90 is at
Hmm.
30, 34.85. We did a pretty scary reversal. So let's see how we handle 32 next week. So I
Hmm.
would say as long as we're above that, let it finish the correction or whatever it's doing and finish up. And if we get below 32, then I think there's a little bit more, something bigger that it has to finish up.
Hmm.
Anything you want to add to
No, I think that's good for silver.
yeah, so we did 135 there. Yeah, silver time might be up. All the time's up for metals looks like for a little bit of a correction.
Hmm.
So we can let it do that. Now
This
the
was a big,
dollar,
big week
the
in the dollar.
dollar, yeah, yeah. Gold's down, dollar's down. What the hell's going on, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we talked about 107 and a quarter last week, and the week before that, and the week before that. And this week we broke it. So I would say longs are below 107 and a 107.25 dollars weaker. I think it's going to correct. I think we're done with the upside. We did 90, roughly 90 up. It was a lower high.
Hmm. Hmm.
And currencies being currencies, I think now let it correct. It's been correcting since here. Um, Before ran out the 90. I think it was 70, ran out 72 first, then 90.
Hmm.
So let it correct and we'll see what happens. So, we want to look for signs of the dollar getting, rallying and finding resistance around 107.90 and 107.25. So those are levels to the upside. There's definitely clear overhead now. So dollars might be a little bit stuck below that unless there's really good news comes up and we can, break above this zone here. The zone I'm talking about is right there. So long as we're below that, it could be some kind of a consolidation correction. Take a quick look at the weekly. So weekly, looking at this, last week we talked about the dollar getting ready to correct because we looked at the resistance here at 109.81, 109.78, and I'm sorry, 109.81, 110. There's a lot of resistance here. We talked about 106.75 and coming down to check the 50% of the square, saying that, if we can hold above that, dollar's in pretty good shape. And that level
Hmm.
is 106. So, let it finish up. Let's see what happens. But I think kind of like the metals, the dollar also has to correct and get that corrective business done. Let's look at the euro. Basically, we got above the 90, right? That's a big accomplishment. And well, I think a little bit of a correction, the euro wouldn't be out of the ordinary. And it's kind of like that ABCD you had me draw
Mm-hmm.
in the bonds. We can do that for the euro, and that looks about like a decent level to finish up. We can do a little bit more of a deep dive into the euro and the dollar next week. I didn't get a lot of time. Maybe it's
Okay.
time because of the corrective nature now that's happening,
Yeah, I think it's a
right?
good idea.
Yeah, let's get into it a little bit. But right now, right building coming right up into the ABCD, you can see the zone between the ABCD and quarter of the square on 106, not 106, 61.34. All these overhead is on top of it. So we can see how we failed here. And I'm thinking we're going to fail again, but that would give enough time for the euro to correct and also the dollar to correct. So it seems like they're tied together pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my take. I think that's the relationship and as far as the corrections go, you know. So we'll go with that for now. The weekly, you can see we are starting to move above the 50%, and that's 42.17. If we manage to hold above that, clearly we're going to hit that ABCD target. I would go with that target now for now
Mm-hmm.
to see how that works out. So not much to add. I think it's just a correction and let it finish up before the trend continues. I had to say that.
Right.
we just we just bullish the dollar. There's nothing we can do. Let's take a look at the Hang
Look at
Seng.
the Hang Seng.
Going, 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 man.
Man, and there's a perfect example of a false break before a big move.
Absolutely. We talked about that last week.
Yep.
And yeah, we had the false break. We were looking at this 19,450, cleared that, sure enough. Cleared the 2380. All the levels are perfectly taken out. Now we're back to the resistance level. So now it's 22,709 is resistance. You can see the line there. So it's possible we do a false break here again and correct, or we get on top of it. So one or the other. Let's see what happens. But at this level, you can see is sort of a really important level because look at the high that happened back in 23,
Mm-hmm.
exactly on the same line, same here and same here.
And a
And this
low
was a
and
false break.
low, you had lows in 21 and 22 there as well. I mean, that's a really important spot.
Oh, back
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Actually, let's take a look. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Really important. So I guess the real move starts once we get above that. Looks like that's
Yep.
really the level, right?
That's the
And it's been making higher lows, so the whole market looks fairly healthy. And if you can break that, looks like it should because it looks like an ascending triangle.
mm-hmm.
Um, I had it weekly, but so far it looks good. Lows look good. Any kind of a deeper correction that holds about the 50% is is okay. It's more of a correction in the bull market. So that's 21,550. It's about where the 50% is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it for that. Are you looking at natural gas this week?
Yeah, we'll take a look. It's
Yeah.
had a little perked up after
Yeah.
finding
Well,
support.
it did that perfect correction. Now it's
Yep.
starting to move higher.
Yep.
Good enough.
So
That's all I got. Let me put it back to you. All right.
excellent.
All right. Well, I'd say high still in.
So far,
So
I
far.
mean,
I mean, it's the truth, right? That's what it is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this
Mhm.
this market has not been able to make a new high. Now, we did complete an ABCD up,
And then
uh,
some.
and a little bit more, and we closed over this half square at 22,090, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's key. Next week, can we get a bar fully above that? Because then
Mm-hmm.
that means we're going to challenge these highs and potentially go on up here to the full square.
Right.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
it has not been able to make a new high. We were talking about that the whole time, where the S&P made a false break high and futures made like a double top. This has not even gotten close, but now it's starting to push.
Yeah. Well, same with the Russell and
Hmm.
Dow. Same thing we just looked at today. Lower
Hmm.
high still. Yeah.
Yeah. So watch 22,000 on the downside. That's the half square here, and 22,800 on the upside. Those are the key levels.
All right.
Let's give you a shot at the weekly. Weekly, you can see we've been basically chopping around in here for 7, 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We do have an up bar right after an inside bar. We have an up bar now. So 21,000 is the key on the downside. That's the half square. If we
Mm-hmm.
can push, you're talking about almost 24,000 is above on the full square. And that's where the target would be if we stay above here,
Mm-hmm.
weekly basis. And then let's look at the monthly. Monthly, we're holding above 21.1, and that's key on a monthly basis. And we do have a higher high this month now, after making a lower low last month.
Mm-hmm.
So can we take out that high and head on up to 24,000? That's the big question. We had a nice square out here, time
Mm-hmm.
wise. So let's see. I think it's very similar to the analysis you did on the S&P and the futures, which is, there's one of three potential outcomes. One is here in this case we make a lower high and reverse. Two is we go up and make a false break high and reverse. Or three, we make a higher high and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all a possibility that you have to be open to at this point.
Yep.
Anything you have to add here on the NQs? There's not a lot to say because we're pretty much in the same situation last week. The only difference is we've now pushed above 22,000, and we have to see, can we get a full bar above it next week?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's the key. Or is this
Mm-hmm.
going to be like the false break here, right? If we reverse here, then this will be a little false break right here. And it was just an ABCD up, and now we're going down again.
Right.
So we'll watch the high and the low this week to see which gets taken out.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll give us a good clue. Even though we got a holiday Monday, we'll see prices Sunday night, like into I think
Mm-hmm.
like a half day Monday. So we'll get a little bit of an idea. Anything else to add here?
No, we're good. I
Okay,
think
let's
we're
go to let's go take a look at another market that's not doing anything.
mm-hmm.
Bitcoin. It's not doing anything, but it's not going down.
Not going up.
Yeah, it's not going up. Little false break here. We got the reaction
Mm-hmm.
off of it. But look at how it's holding really, really, it's really
Yeah.
fighting here at this full square, this 96.6.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7, 8, 10 days we've been in this area. But
Right.
it's not giving it up. So what
Mm.
it appears to be doing is trying to, a lot like gold did, just burn off time, for when a cycle hits and when a cycle ends, like we saw something ended here, the correction came down one square and now we're just sort of burning time. Maybe we're just going to burn time till we get out here or the half square here, which
Mm-hmm.
would be next week, the week of the 20th, February 20th here, or March 15th. Maybe those, since with the cycle ended here, maybe we got to go two squares over. Maybe it's March 15th. This thing gets going again. I mean, but as you can see, look where the lows are
Yeah.
compared to these highs. I mean, there's still it's still got a lot of air,
Yep. Yep.
which is bullish.
Mm-hmm.
If it can hold up in these levels, it's really bullish.
Long term, yes.
And you can see on a weekly basis, this 89,000 area is really key. And we've held it.
Right.
This was a nice square out, false break here, pulled back, but look where the low, we held 89.5. So those are your key numbers, 108 on top, 89.5 on the bottom. But this
Mm-hmm.
just looks like it wants to burn time, it's going sideways, burning time, and just it's not giving it up.
Right.
Let's look at the monthly. Monthly is interesting in that we got outside that circle and we keep coming back and just to the edge of the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't done it yet this month, so I wonder if we're going to get some sort of scare and push down here that again will follow the curvature of the circle as it moves away. Um, Monthly basis, it's the 93,000 level that wants to hold it, and it continues to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Tried in January, tried in December, tried in January, tried in February. It couldn't hold below it.
Well, if we do an inside month, that's going to be interesting because we have a high, then we have an outside bar, we have
Yep.
inside bar. So see how it
Yeah.
all sets up.
So there's a little indecision here.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's the view on Bitcoin. In the commodity world today, we're going to talk about the grains, sugar. We remember I mentioned sugar last week that it had made a low and then shot up, and then we were looking for the first pullback. Well, we got a pullback and a reversal this week.
Hmm.
So we'll talk about that and we'll talk about nat gas.
All right.
Let's go to wheat first.
Mhm.
Okay, so the interesting thing about wheat, we talked about this 578 level being really important, right? And you can see, look at what happened all week, right? We pushed
Hmm.
up last week and I said, okay, now we want to see if we can stay on top. And there was a battle all Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then today, Friday, boom, there, look at what happened.
Yeah,
And we're closing on the high of the week. That's always in
looks strong.
commodities. Yeah, you really like to see that in commodities. So 578 held. It was tested all week, held, pushed up strongly. We're going up, we're pushing towards 653 now. As long as we stay above this is where the magnet is. It's going to be the half square. Now we're going to run into a little resistance here at these previous highs around 617. So don't be surprised if we don't slow it down, the up move a little bit there, but the pressure now is up towards this 653. And this week's price action was what we wanted to see. Get above, stay above, go. Kind of textbook there.
Hmm.
Let's look at the weekly. The movement up continues on a weekly basis, made a higher high this week, closed on the highs. Just a nice sort of turn, right? Pull back, go. And
Yeah.
we want
Yeah.
to we want to take out these highs. That's the next test. That's probably that same from the daily. Yeah, it's around 617. So if we push above that, 681 is next.
Hmm.
But there's nothing wrong with this. Just
No,
a,
no.
a nice pattern.
Yep.
And then let's give you a little look at the monthly. Monthly, we got above 595. That was the big thing, right? We wanted to get above 595. Obviously, we don't have a full bar because we started the month below it. But if we can push up and get well into this square, the
Hmm.
next month, the low, we can get a full bar above 595. And then the monthly will be in a position to push higher.
Yeah.
And the half square there is 775. So
Hmm.
all in all, nice progress on the week on wheat. Everything looks to be good in terms of it's being accumulated. Momentum seems to be coming in. Today we had the big move higher, so ride it and on shorter time frames buy pullbacks. That's what it looks
Hmm.
like in wheat. Anything you want to point out or add on wheat?
No, we're good. Perfect.
Okay, let's look at beans next.
Hmm.
So beans, as we discussed, the key level there was 1,035. And look where we closed, 1,036 and change. So we
Well, we
came
made it.
down. Yeah, we made it. It came down. It was pressured, right? It- you know,
Hmm.
they even had a full bar under yesterday, but today they pushed back higher.
Hmm.
So this you could see we were talking about a correction. We said, be wary of a correction. We're going to get a correction. But look at what the correction's been. It's been mostly sideways.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty positive. Next week we want to see. We want full bars above, above this full square at 1,035. If we could stay on top of that, that'll be the launching pad to push us up towards the half square at 1125.
Hmm.
This is not a bad pattern, right? Push up off the low, the correction is sideways, and then you want to go.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at the weekly. All right, so here's the weekly. You can see
Hmm.
why this 1060 is so important, right?
Hmm.
Look at the battle last 3, 4 weeks. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. This week we couldn't get above it. So we got to watch that closely. On a weekly basis, we really need to push above 1060.
Hmm.
because here it's just basically going sideways right now at this. This is a pretty big battle. So if the bulls can win this battle and sit on top there, then we're gonna go. Because then you'll have the weekly, kicking in along with the daily.
Right.
But 1060 weekly basis is key to watch.
Mm.
Let's take a look at the monthly. The monthly shows we have an up bar already. We made a higher high. We're above the full square of 983. So the monthly's in decent shape. With another month or two or a small push higher, we'll actually bust this downtrend line, and then we'll really, be able to take off and get towards that half square, that
Mm-hmm.
1275. On a cycle basis, you can see this thing loves 45s and 90s. So I said,
Yep.
what if we do 45 months from the low, puts us, the bull market should end in 28 sometime,
Mm-hmm.
like May of 28. So that's what we got to look forward to. And it based on the action in all the grains, it looks like we have this corrective phase is over. And it was a couple year correction. It wasn't like, 6 week thing or anything. It was a big correction. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it looks like we're kicking off the bull phase here now for the grains.
Right.
Anything you want to add on beans?
Well, we're good as long as we're above that 983, which seems like a normal correction. Not
Yeah,
even to get there, but anything above that. Now that we tested it and passed everything, so
yeah, we should be good there.
mm.
All right, let's go take a look at the next one. Interesting spot where we closed, huh?
It's trying. It's trying. So.
And you could see it's been battling, right? We called out the square here, right? We said, okay, this thing squared out up here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have some sort of correction. We had basically
Correction. Yeah.
2 bars down, and then we've been sideways for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad thing if you're a bull, right? Because the correction is we're burning off the time and we're not giving up much in price. As a matter of fact, we're challenging that 499 level, which is pretty big resistance at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So daily basis, we want to get above 499. We sit on top of that. Then we're looking at the half square at 551. Let's take a look at the weekly. Here's the weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Very
can see,
steady.
yeah, you can see it was a nice sort of steady move up. And here's your correction. See all these this sort of sideways looking thing? It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like an expanding triangle, isn't it?
Yep.
So we'll let it play out. 517 weekly basis is the next key level. Right? If we get up there, sit on it, then we open up 621. But it's following a nice one by one. It's holding it, looks like it's, really likes it because it's holding on to it like every day. It's taking it on the way up, holding on to the rope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's just a nice steady uptrend. And look here, nice structure on that low, huh?
Very nice.
So the bullishness is there in the chart. Just let it play out. 517 is the next important level on the weekly. We're going to attack that. We get on top of that, then it's 621.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
All right, let's take a look at the monthly. And the monthly shows we've got air above 463 full square.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. All right. Last month we pushed through it, but we had a part of the bar below it. This month, as long as we can close the month entirely clearing 463, 608 opens up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Broke the downtrend line. You see beans is a little behind. It's still got work to do on a monthly basis, but corn was the leader. And as you can see, it cleared the first hurdle, unlike wheat, unlike beans that haven't cleared the first hurdle on that monthly basis yet.
Mm-hmm.
So everything looks good with corn. It's doing its correction here after squaring out. It's just sideways correcting. Key level to watch on the daily is getting above that 499.
Yeah.
Anything to add here on corn?
No, we're good. I think that's a good read.
Yep.
And once we break out, I guess we'll start the next leg.
Yeah, exactly. Then once we get above that full squares, it'll be the next
Hmm.
leg. All right, let's go to the next one. This is a new one.
Hmm.
Uh, Last year we talked about sugar and we caught, part of this move here
Hmm.
off the low. And then we had this correction and it just kept correcting. And then we got stuck below the full square there. And when we
Hmm.
got stuck below that full square, I was like, oops, something else is going on. What we got to watch out here and see what we're going to
Yeah.
do. And look at what we did. We came down and we did a double bottom essentially.
Hmm.
Slightly higher low, right?
Hmm.
Slightly
Yeah.
higher from there to there. But and then we took off after it. And I said, whoa, that's interesting as I was watching it develop. And then last week I mentioned, hey, look, we had a push up. It looks like we finished something up here.
Hmm.
And then let's see what this pullback does. And look where the pullback held, right on the full square. I mean, right
Yeah.
on the half square, 1937. And then we reversed and made a higher high. So this thing looks like it's ready to go again. Next target is the full square up here at 21 and a quarter. Uh, as long as we're above that half square at 1937, I think it's in good shape and looks like we're ready to roll again to the upside here.
Could you call that a reverse head and shoulders?
Yeah, you could.
It could be
Right
that, right?
here, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shoulder, head,
There.
shoulder.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And we just broke through the neckline. So
That's the case. We're heading to 21, 25,
yeah.
26. Yeah.
Yep. Right at that full square. So strange pattern, but you
Hmm.
you trade what they give you.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly shows a nice move. There's your double bottom, found support on the
Hmm.
full square, right where it's supposed to.
Solid.
And we just been pushing up. This week we pushed above the half square at 1989. Next week, let's see if we can get a full bar above.
And that 1750 area is really good. Look at that entire.
Yeah, yeah, over here, over here, over here.
Hmm.
It's pretty important. But this looks nice. Looks nice
Yeah.
on a
It's very good.
on a weekly basis. Let's take a look
Hmm.
at the monthly just to give you the full picture. And again, so that 1780, 1750, 1770 area, you can
Hmm.
see it has a lot of action here
Yeah.
going back to '06. But we've got a reversal bar here this month. Let's see if we can push to 22.
Hmm.
So 21 and a quarter, 22 is kind of the target here off of this move. But it does look good,
Yeah. Looks good. So coming off the
especially
right level, right?
yeah. And look at the way it came out of that low. It was no doubt, right? One, two, three, four, 5 straight days up.
Yeah. Yeah. No sleeper.
And then we paused here at the half square, which was expected, pushed
Hmm.
above it, came back and
Retested.
checked it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
gone again. So something's going on there. There'll probably be a weather announcement or something coming up that will say afterwards, that's the reason why.
Hmm.
But it does look good. All right, let me go down to the next one. Anything you want to add here on sugar before we switch over to the next one?
No, we're good. I think, no, no, we're fine.
Okay. I want to show you before we go to the other one. I want to show you one thing on gold because this is what some of the thing, how these circles act. Because you and I have been showing the circles.
Yep.
Then we were talking about oh, gold is getting kind of held by the edge of the circle,
Hmm.
and then when it breaks out, it goes
It
right.
goes. Yep.
Look at
Hmm.
that. It's a
Check
perfect.
out that.
That's a
Hmm.
perfect example of how that happens.
Check out that inside bar at the top of top of the slope, and that was it.
Yeah. But that's how these circles work. Like they hold it, hold it, hold it until they don't, and then it rips
Hmm. Hmm.
once it breaks out. And that's an example in gold.
Yep.
But let's go to our last one. Hold on. Natty gas.
Hmm.
All right. So we talked about the square that we got here and said, okay, there's going to be some sort of correction. Let's see what kind of correction we're going to get. And we got this move down here. we would like to have it held the half square. It didn't. We kind of gapped. I think this might have been a contract change too. We gapped and had a contract change, so we popped below. But look where the low came in, Barry.
Huh.
Not decent structural support, right?
Very good. Yeah.
These highs here, and then we reversed off that, blew right through the half square.
Hmm.
So now it looks like we're heading back up to test this full square at 401. What we want to watch and we want to make certain of is we stay above this half square at 341. Any pullbacks we want to have hold right here. And then let's see if we can get a push and take out these highs and then move up, towards this 460 area.
Hmm.
That's your daily. Let's look at the weekly. No surprise where we closed. Key level 371, right?
Yep.
So next week we want to see, can we get a full week, the full bar for next week above this 371 area? And that will clear this and allow us to attack this high and then potentially head up to that 470. Again, the pullback testing these highs of here, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not terrible, but 371 weekly basis is key next week. We don't want to get stuck under that. Like if we get a full bar under that, it means the correction's got more to go.
Right. But it's making some nice higher lows and higher highs, and things are so
Absolutely
far
here.
looking
And
nice.
getting
Yeah.
that nice curl you like to see too, as
Yep.
the momentum kicks in, right?
Yep.
That the curl starts. Let's take a look at the monthly. We broke out of that triangle. Right now we're an
Hmm.
inside bar. We opened at the lows, and so far we're up near the highs mid-month.
Hmm.
Like to see us push up, maybe, get up into that 488 area by taking out those highs.
Hmm.
But monthly basis, we're still okay, right? Because the lows, haven't even come back to really test the triangle or the apex at all.
Right.
So it's holding up nicely.
Hmm.
It let it correct. We let it correct. Now it's turned back up. Now we want to see, show us that you got the bulls, you know, behind you. Hold
Hmm.
above 341 on a pullback, get above 401 on the upside. Sitting up on top of this would be really good because you can see it couldn't do it here.
Right.
So if this time we go up and can sit here, that's the platform we need to push higher.
Hmm.
Anything else you want to add here on gas?
No, everything's good. We're looking at the trend. We talked about the lows when at the time when they came in, and now we're moving,
That's exactly right.
and it's starting to trend.
And it's curling, right? Because that momentum's coming in, which
Hmm.
is really nice to see.
Yeah.
Barry, I think I want to end on this week with a like giving people a view of how we come up with some of the cycle dates. We've shown them with
Hmm.
the squares, but squares aren't the only method we use. I have some proprietary cycles that you and I have discovered, and we work
Hmm.
and we use those dates. And you
Hmm.
have other geometric ways of showing them. And I
Hmm.
think being that we're in this sort of do or die zone in the next week or two, I thought it might be good if you could, walk them through and show them, how you come up with other cycle dates and other cycles associated with these changes that we expect.
Sure. Let me take the screen really quick.
Okay.
Let's see. We can talk about, one of the things I think outside of squares, one of the things we talk about a lot would be the ABCDs and the Gartleys, right?
hmm
It's
hmm The
it's
equal
the
moves. Yep.
equal moves. So here's a this is a weekly chart, and
This is the cash weekly, SPX weekly, right?
yeah, it's weekly.
hmm
And this is sort of a scratch pad for me, but I was well, actually, this is yeah, we can look at some things. Well, one of the things we do is we look at the counts. I look at the calendar counts. I look at the calendar days, and I look at the trading days. I look at the degrees of movement,
hmm
and then it's like, well, what do you do with so many? But the thing is, there's a pattern to how they show up, and that's what you want to look at. And
hmm
here you're basically looking at the bar counts, and you can see I'm just keeping track of it, see when the clusters come in, see when if there's a pattern that emerges. And that's another way. that I do, but who's got time? We don't, when we're doing the show, we don't have time to talk about all the different relationships and so forth and so on.
Right.
But it's something that shows up often, and I use that. What else? Well, we talked about ABCDs and we talked about Gartley's, and you see this little cross up here. I have a little time zone and a price zone there.
It's not you getting religious, right?
Yeah, well, religious about analysis. But,
All right.
so here, but this is a pretty cool example of things, and 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 I was trying to figure out where that cross came from. Actually, honestly, I forgot how I got that because I
Right.
must have done it. I think I did it while back here back in
A while
23.
ago. Right.
hmm And sometimes I mark things and I forget how I did it. But anyway, to get to the point, you're talking about time counts coming in. One of the time time count cycles you can look at are relationships within a Gartley. You can look at the XB cycle, high to high, and how that pans out in time, and you can look at low to lows, low to highs. So you can match up the ABX to ABC. And doing that, if you look at XA, which is the main cycle down,
So
you
that's
know,
the time, just to explain, that's the time it takes from going from point X to point A and then projecting that time out.
yeah, it's from X, the high here in this case, high to
Hmm.
low, and
Hmm.
you project it out. So the first cycle out gave us B, which happens to be
A high.
a high.
Hmm.
Second cycle out, not much. It got the low on the pullback, and the third cycle got us the high. And we haven't really done much outside of that. We're kind of moved. We're stuck there, pretty much where we are now. But
Hmm.
anyway, it gave us that. And if you take the XB cycle, which is high to high, you
Get
can
rid
see
of
that.
the XA there because it's,
Is it crowding?
yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Then you can put them all in at the end.
Okay, so XB, you can see that came in this week as high to high to high cycle is in place. That's a
Hmm.
cool thing to see.
Yep.
And if you take the AB, which is the secondary cycle, so we got XAB, AB,
Yep.
we're the second cycle. So first cycle was right here. Second cycle is next week. And if you turn them on all together, you can see there's a cluster right
Right
there.
there. Hmm.
hmm And there's a cluster, two hits there, which gave us the high. And so, they don't come in that often, but when they do, you can see there's something happens. And these counts are a good way to look at things. I don't use this exclusively, but it's good to look at them. Like
Absolutely.
I always forward look and I'll mark out a territory if I see something and then see how the squares come in. You can combine things. And well, while we're on time, here's another. Well, these are all the potential targets for the Gartley. So if you
Hmm.
look, this is actually a demo of the tool, but basically, if you go for the high probability, the Gartley, the real Gartley, by the book should have came in here, and it kind
Hmm.
of did. It,
It
came
did.
up,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
came into the box, had a correction, and
Hmm.
started to move away. But that's not the only target, right? If you do all the ratios out, at least if you take out the important ratios, you can see there's a cluster of two, and that's enough coming in right here, right at the highs. So we have price in terms of these ratio projections, and then we have time in terms of time projections. They all come in. That's where that little cross window comes in. And so that's, to answer your question, that's one way of looking at price and time. Is also another way of keeping track of time cycles.
No, it's
Um,
fantastic. And
yeah, and it's a different view, right? It's from
it's a different view. And the key thing I hope people are getting is that there's no holy grail, right? What you're looking for is evidence. And you stack the evidence up and then you say, oh wow, look at all the evidence on that one side of the scale. There's a good probability that that could happen.
Yes, and you want to look at the reliability of them over time, right? You want to use the tools that there's a high probability of when the tools show you something, have a historical, you want to have a historical evidence of that working more often than not. Know what I mean? So, and these tools work pretty well.
I was going to say, share with them how that you have what your confidence level is in these types of tools.
Yeah. So, I mean, my confidence is high, especially if there's a couple of other things that comes in along with, we rely on the squares because it's easy to map things out. So if square things line up with some geometry and some ratios, why not? I don't use these things on its own because it's just too not reliable enough. Like you can see how many ratio hits we went through getting up
Right.
to the
That's
high, right?
true. That's
So
true.
I don't really look at those, but time can always come in a cluster, especially ratio time count. So if they come in, you can look at it. So there's one. See what other tools are in here now that
I
we're.
mean, so we look
Uh-huh.
at we have geometric timing, you have the
Mm-hmm.
squares timing,
Mm-hmm.
we're in a panic cycle, a
Mm-hmm.
longer term panic cycle now. I mean, this is kind of, how we do it when we're looking at cycles and when we talk about the cycles, when you get all these things clustering, it doesn't guarantee you 100% something's going to happen, but it certainly makes the odds higher than normal that something could happen.
Well, plus we can see the evidence, right? But when we came in here for a whole month, we've been stranded, stalled here. So
Hmm.
obviously something is there. I mean, it didn't stall in any of the other places, right? It's just stalled here. This entire block has been, under those two time ratios. I mean, price projections. And
Hmm.
now we have other counts coming up. We have low to high 120 weeks, which is, no pushover.
No.
And we have 252 weeks from the 2020 low. We have 162 from the high to high. So all these counts matter. And here we have a cluster of time, even just regular counts without even having projections, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, we have 36, 72, 101, 120 here, low to high, high to high. So you want to keep an eye on the counts and see how they show up. And you want to look at, I mean, so the counts are one thing, GAN counts are another thing. I mean, swing counts, right? High to high,
Hmm.
low to high. And
Yep.
then you have ratio counts are, of course, another way to look at time. And you got planetary cycles and all kinds of cycles. So I just want to show you this, share with you guys, because we talk about Gartley a lot and we talk about ABCDs because we don't really normally go into all the little clusters that we see. And also the higher the time frame, the stronger these clusters, the way they show up. So this is a weekly, not a 30-minute.
Yeah,
So
these are big cycles.
mhm. So
Big
we'll see,
cycles.
and we have we looked at B and the other how when the XA came into B, that triggered a few months correction. So, there is a trail of evidence for these things to work till they don't, at some point
Right.
they kind of evaporate. But
Which is why your base is always the technicals, because the technicals will warn you that it's not working or it is working.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is it's always a binary, right? We want to remember, like we've been stuck in this section for a couple of
Couple
months.
couple
Yeah.
months now.
Yeah. So the thing is, of course, by this time, half the people are obviously talking about it going higher, other half is talking about going lower. And that's exactly why we're in the middle, that they're like a little fight in the middle.
Right.
And our job is to actually sort of stay neutral, try to see what the evidence is, and just go with the break as we see it, as it's happening. And that's what we're doing. So all that to say, we know overhead we have a lot of things. We saw those projections, we saw the square levels, so on and so forth. So if they somehow get taken out, we settle above, then I think, then we have room to run another few hundred points, no question about
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
But until it does, it doesn't. And you can't trade long if the market's going sideways, and certainly can't go short, trade short if the market's going sideways. So in the meantime, all we can do is kind of weigh things every week and see how it's all adding up and continue to go till we see it. I mean, that's what happens when we day trade, right? We watch and we wait. We say, okay, if this happens, it's probability we're going to go higher. So then you take the long side. Kind of like we trade the fuse patterns, and you have to be
Hmm.
super patient. Wait till the pattern comes in, and then it's clear. Well, there's a very high probability it can go higher versus lower, very clear cut. That's when you take the trades, and those are very high probability. So always comes back to the high probability. You know the patterns, you know what it takes, and you take it.
And
And
so
we,
this is the details behind the quest for the fat pitch.
yes, ongoing, always,
Always, always on. It's an ongoing quest,
never ends.
right?
Hmm.
But this is what's behind it, and that's why I brought it up because Barry and I were going over this and we were talking about the cycles before the show, and he's like, maybe they'd want to see this. I said, great idea. I think they would.
Hmm.
I think this
Yeah.
is really cool stuff and valuable information. Valuable information.
Yeah, it's
So
good to know. Good to know how the structure's lined up. And now you guys can do it too. This is easy to do. You know, you can just do the counts, take a counting ruler on if you guys are using TradingView or something, just it's easy to count the XB, project it forward, just drop some vertical lines. We used to have to do all this by hand, so it's it's very easy now these days to keep track of things.
absolutely. Well, listen,
Mhm.
everybody, enjoy the long holiday weekend. We'll say the same thing we say every week. Rest up, because in 2025 the volatility is going to be huge. If these counts come to fruition and the panic cycle exerts its influence, we could have the next month could really be active in the market. So
Mhm.
we're ready. We're trying to be ready. Hopefully, you guys are ready and rested and prepared for the coming week because it could be a big week. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So great job, Barry. We'll talk to you all next week, probably midweek. I don't know if Barry, if you're traveling, probably we won't do it, but if you're stationary, we can certainly try and do a midweek show.
Yeah, let's try to do one. I think it's about time. And we'll have things to talk about because we didn't do one last week. So I think
Yeah.
it's time. Yeah. All right. Good job. We'll talk to you guys next week. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.